Welcome everybody that's joining. We'll just give it a minute for people to join and then we will kick off. So welcome everybody. We will kick off and hopefully a few more people might join us as we carry on with the session. So first of all, thanks everybody for joining, whether you're live today or in our virtual room or watching this session via recording. We are here today to celebrate the achievements of 3 institutions who've been through the University Mental Health Charter Award Assessment process. Just to introduce myself, my name is Francesca Coleman. I'm Head of Programmes here at Student Minds, and I'm joined by a number of the team who I'm sure you will know, including Lee Spanner, our Programme Lead for Sector Improvement. We also have Amanda and Emily on the session as well. Before I kick us off properly, I'll just do a couple of bits of housekeeping. So the session is being recorded. If you don't want to be on camera, please just turn your camera off, and then you won't be seen on the session. There will be a chance to ask questions towards the latter part of the session, so please do note any down and share via the chat function. But moving back to the focus of today's session, as a team, we're often asked by members of the University Mental Health Charter programme what it's like to go for the award. Now, we can talk through the award assessment process, the various stages regarding to the requirements and the assessment, but only universities who've been through that process itself can bring it to life. And it can importantly talk about what happens after you receive your award assessment outcome. Undertaking the University Mental Health Charter Award is not a tick box exercise. It requires a strategic commitment from the university leadership and resource from across the organisation to both embed a whole university approach, but also support the assessment process. But the work doesn't stop once the assessment is complete. To truly embed a whole university approach to mental health and wellbeing is to commit to a process of continuous improvement. We see that it's really challenging at the moment for higher education, and so we know that this commitment feels even more crucial. And we know that an investment in mental health and wellbeing is a worthwhile investment. So we want to recognise those universities who've led the way by signing up to the University Mental Health Charter programme and have undertaken the award, and create opportunities for them to share learning and best practice within the sector. Which is why I'm so excited to welcome our 3 speakers today. Everybody is united by a drive to improve mental health and wellbeing for university communities, both students and staff. Each have received a different award outcome, and we'll talk a little bit about their experiences today. So we're joined by Tom Hurst from Leeds Trinity University, Ben Goose from the University of Bath, and Helen Rowland from the University of Southampton. So the order of today is we'll do a few questions with each of our guests. We'll do some questions for all of them, and then we'll move on to questions from the room. So I'll hand over to Lee for our first chat.
Hello everyone, as Fran said, I am Lee. I'm the programmes lead for the University Mental Health Charter. I was involved with the Charter a few years ago, led the development and implementation. I was actually the co-author as well, and I've been away and I've recently rejoined the Charter programme. Been here for about a month now, so it's great to be here. So first we're going to hear from Leeds Trinity University. They were one of the very first universities to go through the award assessment process back in 2021 to 2022, and they received no award outcome. And despite this, the institution is a testament to embodying the ethos of the Charter. They've really embraced continuous improvement and strive to improve outcomes for students through embedding a whole university approach. So over to Tom. Can you say a bit more about your team's key takeaways from the process, even though you didn't receive the award, and how have they linked to your strategic priorities?
Thanks, Lee, and hi, everyone. So I think it's probably important to say, first of all, I wasn't with the university at the time. So I only joined the university around 18 months ago, but have spent quite a lot of time with colleagues who were part of that process, who were interviewed on the day, etc. And it was interesting sort of reflecting on this question, because having spoke to a lot of colleagues, I think one of the first things most people said was we didn't feel we were ready And I thought that was really brave and really honest of the people who went through this. And that wasn't from a place of, we didn't think we were delivering good support or high quality support, but actually more focusing on some of the strategic areas and actually how did our strategy align with some of what we were delivering, how were our processes maturing. So it was a really, I suppose, good opportunity for us to take stock and reflect in that sort of debrief period. I think colleagues went into this wanting to celebrate the good work that was being done and the practices that we were really proud of. And again, on reflection, maybe that had distracted us a little bit from the areas that we needed to improve. So having the feedback, particularly through the non-award outcome, helped sort of ground us a little bit there. I think the other area that we reflected on was, as our systems and our governance processes were maturing, we struggled to evidence impact. And this has been a bit of a journey for us in terms of how did we use data, how are we continually interpreting data in the same way so that we could identify some of those trends. So that was another area that we had a long period of reflection around. And I think overall, speaking to colleagues who were part of the assessment, overall people had positive reflections, and that's, albeit a comprehensive and an intense process to go through. People were complimentary about it and actually felt as though what we got out of that at the end was really valuable and something that we could use to steer our strategic direction, our improvement approaches, etc. So yeah, although I wasn't a part of it, colleagues who were had reflected that in a very positive way.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Tom. So, of course, we appreciate that getting a no award outcome could potentially have impacts on staff morale, especially as they've worked so hard to go through the process, and it is quite an intensive process. Your outcome report still highlighted areas of good practice and affirmed good practice and great work within Leeds Trinity. But how did you communicate about the result internally, and what's the impact been?
Thanks, Lee. So I think initially, yeah, absolutely agree. People were understandably disappointed, but I think the leadership team took the opportunity to really celebrate those successes. So the things that we thought we were doing well had been highlighted as we were doing well. So having a debrief, bringing that working group back together and going through that was really reassuring. We brought the working group back together and tried to translate the areas for improvement or those recommendations into an action plan. And I think one of the early reflections for us was we did that, but we did that without sharing the report in its entirety with everyone. And I don't think that was an intentional omission. But when we got that group back together, there was a lot of value in us sharing it in its entirety so people could really understand the context of the improvement recommendations that were being made. And maybe not everyone read it in its entirety, but actually people having access to that was really important. Initially, we had, between this recommendation and some of the areas we'd identified ourselves, around 100 points on an improvement plan, on an action plan, and that felt quite daunting. So in terms of how we've been able to take that forward with colleagues who've received that feedback and who understood it well, we were able to really look at what are our priority areas, and the report helped us identify some of that. So there were some stronger recommendations than others. So being able to focus on those and then pin those strategic aims or objectives to that report was really valuable for us. I think positioning it as a journey was again very important for us. So taking the chance to consolidate, to review that feedback, and make sure that we weren't rushing back into requesting reassessment or running before we could walk, for want of a better term, was also really important. And being able again to celebrate the successes as we went. So I think there was a few areas of learning for us, but I think one of the biggest one was sharing the report in its entirety, being really candid, validating the areas that we were doing well and providing that reassurance to colleagues, and then prioritizing the areas that we take forward first and making it digestible.
Thanks. That's some really useful insight that I'm sure will, really benefit people watching today who are going through the process themselves and thinking about how they use that outcome report. So you've touched on this a bit already, but can you talk about some of the specific changes that you have made following your outcomes report and your assessment?
Yeah, so those two key areas for us that I think we identified. So one of those was the absence of a strategy, and also the perceived lack of focus around colleague well-being. So those were two areas that we reconvened on very quickly, and we were able to use this and the university mental health charter framework as two driver documents for want of a better term, to really push forward our proposal to develop a university-wide mental health and wellbeing strategy. So although there was reference to mental health from a colleague and a student perspective through some of our strategic goals as a university and some of our sub-strategies, we didn't have a single strategy to drive this area forward. So we, over the last year, have been co-creating that strategy with colleagues and students, and have positioned it as a university community-wide strategy. We were able to use the feedback and the frameworks to position our focus groups, so people could choose which areas they wanted to engage in. And I think we may have faced a bit of challenge around positioning this as a university-wide group, had we not been able to pin it to the feedback we received from the charter, and the evidence to support that. We were able to identify some student-specific goals and work streams, some staff-specific goals and work streams, but where the opportunity arose, we brought some of those goals together. So particularly around belonging, around environment, we've had staff and students help co-create what we want the future to look like. So I think those were, when we went back to that prioritization exercise, these were the foundations that we identified. There were other recommendations that we want to take forward and we will take forward, but actually it was very much felt, if we get this foundation right, and it's co-created and it's what our students and colleagues want, that's the work that we should be investing in initially. But yeah, I think those are probably the key priorities in terms of what we took away from that report.
Thank you. I mean, you've clearly invested an incredible amount of work and energy towards shaping your whole university approach. Can you say a bit more about some of the things that have helped you in that continuous improvement journey?
Yeah, so I think building on the sort of the last answer, what we tried to move away from was colleague-focused work streams and student-focused work streams for, I suppose, all of the evidence supported within the charter, but acknowledgement of that interdependency regarding well-being and welfare and support for our staff and students. So we've now got a more community-based delivery group. So actually, there's a lot of shared learning there that can be applied. I think it helps us address the perceived inequity at times between students and staff, and I think that's more from a colleague perspective, often looking at what we deliver to students and thinking, why don't we get something maybe to that degree in terms of support and well-being? So it's been really helpful to bring those two groups together. I think more broadly in terms of the university-wide approach, and the culture shift and move towards health and well-being being part of everyone's business. We have now got wellbeing champions who are embedded across different departments and faculties, and we've done that on a voluntary basis. So really embracing the people who have that special interest, who feel as though they've got those skills to contribute to supporting colleagues and students, but also supporting more strategic initiatives as well. We're very lucky that we have some charter assessors as well within the institution, and so particularly within our academic services, they've been able to contribute towards developments within our curriculum. So we have a curriculum for social justice that has a specific mental health strand, and that's given us, it's been really valuable in raising awareness of how engagement with the curriculum and the evidence that sits within the learn domain can contribute towards those positive well-being and welfare outcomes for our students. And I think finally, having executive leads who are both professionally and personally invested in the well-being and the mental health improvements has been really vital for us. So knowing that although we're not always at the table for all of the decisions that are being made, well-being, welfare, now being looked at much more collectively across staff and students, is always being advocated for. So it feels as though we have always got that seat at the table, and it is always being considered. And that we've seen that grow even in just the last 18 months, that different executive leads are advocating for that in different ways. So I think those are probably the 3 or 4 things that have really started to shift our improvement approaches to a university-wide approach, and away from maybe the more siloed improvement groups, focusing on student improvements specifically.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing your experiences, Tom. It's just been really interesting to hear about how that award process in itself has really supported the work that you're doing, and some of the insights of how you've approached that following that award outcome. Back to anybody who's watching right now, if you're interested to hear more from Tom or have any specific questions about what it's like to receive that no award outcome, then please do pop any questions in the chat or the Q&A feature, and we'll hear more from Tom in just a short while. But I will pass back to Fran, who is going to talk us through the University of Bath.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you, Tom, so much for your candid reflections. So looking to the University of Bath, they went through the award assessment process during 2022 to 2023, receiving an award in progress outcome. The institution's played an important role in shaping the evolving programme and award experience for the University Mental Health Charter, providing constructive feedback and helping us to refine the approach for others. And through strong engagement with the process, the university has strengthened its own whole university approach for staff and student wellbeing through meaningful improvements and milestones. So Ben, first question for you. As a university who was given an award in progress, can you share how your approach has evolved between your initial application and now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's great to be part of this. So yeah, I think when we received that initial outcome of an award in progress, and I think at the time actually, it was called something slightly different, which was one of the things we fed back, and it did then change, which was really positive. But there definitely was, and I suppose echoing some of what Tom said, there was kind of definitely an amount of surprise and frustration from colleagues and students who'd obviously put in a lot of time and effort into the whole kind of process. And I think we joined the charter in early 2021, so there'd been kind of a year and a half, 2 years working towards the actual application submission, and then that participation in the on-site visit. So I think it was quite a difficult time for a little while there, and we really had to manage the way that we were communicating with our colleagues and students around that outcome. I think, however, once we had the award report and we, as a steering group, digested it, there was that realization that an award in progress was not actually that negative at all. The assessors, it was very clear that the assessors fully expected us to be able to achieve an award within kind of a 12-month period, obviously, as long as we met certain requirements. And actually the amount of positive feedback that we identified in the award report, kind of affirming the work that we've been doing in certain areas, kind of really positive, positive feedback, and actually being able to share that with colleagues, not just within the steering group, but also kind of share it with colleagues across the organisation and students actually as well, then that actually kind of had a kind of positive impact. I'd say we did then have a period we kind of did have this 12-month, I suppose you could call it a deadline to an extent, but I do think that was quite useful in helping us to really focus on those requirements and those priorities that we needed to kind of meet in order to achieve the award. And we had really helpful student minds set up, so our requirements were kind of around the clinical governance area on both the student and staff side. And I think the award report was really helpful, but we did kind of want a little bit of additional context, information, things to clarify. So having kind of a follow-up meeting with the clinical lead from Student Minds was massively helpful. I think in terms of how we've evolved, though, between that kind of initial application period and now, we probably were guilty of being quite focused, I would say, during that period on the award and achieving the award, whereas I'd say our approach now actually is much more reflective in nature. So I think our approach really changed. So we kind of, once we achieved the award, it really was an opportunity to take us another step back and evaluate how we wanted to work longer term and in a more sustainable way, instead of maybe kind of like just having that focus on the framework and the kind of areas of good practice and the areas of improvement. So I think in doing that, we shifted to this kind of like, and we really kind of started focusing on the embedding part of the charter, and how do we embed that in our context specifically at Bath. And the fact that I think the award report really did highlight that, you know, different organizations, institutions are going to do things differently because we're all different sizes and shapes and have different students and different staff. So one size really doesn't fit all. So you can actually, you know, you can do it in your way. And I think it was really important that we actually did then kind of recognize that. But on the flip side, it was always really helpful having the charter framework as a reference point and to almost kind of keep referring back to check in about, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I think that's where we've kind of changed. We've become much more kind of looking at the long-term sustainable kind of cultural change piece now, rather than necessarily looking at it as just, or not just, but as, you know, the framework and the award. That's slightly taken a little bit of a backseat, and we're now looking internally at Bath and where we want to be in 5 years' time and what does success look like for us.
Thanks, Ben. I think your experience mirrors so much of what other people who are watching this will like, I guess they will identify with that, and that kind of shift, as you say, as you kind of move away from that kind of quite a drive towards the assessment process, but that kind of embedding and sustainability. And I think the importance of that report, as well as you say, for that to affirm the work of your colleagues and students and just give that recognition. Just moving on to the next question, what do you think has been the most meaningful learning experience during your journey so far?
Yeah, I think I probably kind of touched on this a little bit in the last answer, but I think the answer's in the question. It's that word journey, 100%. And I know that Tom mentioned journey, you know, when he was talking, and it kind of, you don't want it to sound kind of cliched or in any way or cheesy, but actually it really is a journey. And I think us recognizing that as a steering group and the wider university, that probably was the biggest learning experience for us. You know, moving from that focus on the award, but not really understanding actually what's the change process that we need to go through as an organization, in order to kind of go on that journey and really think about how we have a whole university approach and how we embed that. So I think it has kind of encouraged us, going through the award process, really encouraged us to be much more reflective, and think about our approach to change and what are we looking to change. And now we're trying to continue that through something that we call Be Well at Bath, which is effectively our kind of mental health and wellbeing strategy. So yeah.
Thank you so much. You've referred a little bit to the challenge of maintaining momentum, particularly after getting your first outcome. How do you maintain momentum now and institutional engagement through the different stages of the process?
Yeah, so I think now that we've got the award, we have transitioned quite a lot to a slightly different structure. We've actually transitioned probably to a more formalized structure in the sense of, in thinking about embedding it, we had a working group that was focused on the, you know, the award application, the self-assessment, then meeting the conditions. Whereas we've moved that to a Be Well steering group that reports directly to our student and staff experience boards, which report into our executive board. So I suppose in terms of maintaining that momentum, we've very much kind of ingrained ourselves within the kind of I suppose the governance of the university. So for example, we obviously recognise that we do an annual report now to student minds, but we're also doing an internal annual report to our executive board and to our university council as well, which previously, yes, certain things would go to those boards related to mental health and wellbeing, but we're now actually doing it. We're doing an annual report based on our strategy and the progress that we're making with Be Well at Bath. So I think that's really important that we've embedded that within our governance, and it also is we kind of are constantly thinking as a group, almost like if we didn't exist, if we weren't here, how do we guarantee that this work actually would just carry on naturally within the university? And in a sense, we do sometimes say that what our aim is that we don't have to have a steering group, that we've embedded it and it continues. I mean, we're a long way off from that, but so yeah, so that's been really important. I think another way that we're kind of trying to maintain that momentum was kind of actually through, we did hold like a really, and it might sound a little bit trivial, we did hold a big celebration event when we achieved the award. And we coupled that, we didn't want people to see that as, oh, they've, the university's got another award, great, they've ticked that box. So we made sure that it coincided with the kind of launch of our new mental health and wellbeing strategy, Be Well at Bath. So I think that was really important. That was hosted by our Vice Chancellor. It had really visible leadership, kind of just showing to students and staff, really championing the work and sending a strong message that this has been a priority and it's going to continue to be a priority. And then it was kind of quite forward looking rather than, oh yeah, we've got the award. It was actually, and look, in the next 5 years, we're looking to make even more progress in this area and looking to embed this further, and you can be involved. So yeah, and then we've kind of developed since then a really clear kind of strategic comms and engagement plan, which I think is really important which is all of our kind of leads for the different areas who are kind of senior people at the university, that they are really being quite visible across the university in terms of that, so that we're providing updates and giving opportunities for our colleagues and students to engage regularly. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think you've alluded a little bit to this, to my next question in some of what you've answered. Like we've kind of talked about, embedding a whole university approach can take years to achieve. What indicators have you seen of this within your institution, whether that's talking about kind of how you've embedded it into your governance, or even just something that's made you, perhaps as a steering group, just step back and reflect and think, oh yeah, we can see that we're making that difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's probably a couple of examples. I think part of what we've done since we achieved the award, which is coming up to 12 months now, was really actually going into those areas of the university that are the kind of the embedded parts of the organization. So, for example, having conversations with our I can never remember what it stands for, but they're like our policy planning strategic change team, for example, our governance teams, going into those and talking about what Be Well at Bath is and what the charter is and how can we work with them to embed things, because actually they have kind of quite a lot of control around that area. So some examples that we've implemented in the last 12 months that really I kind of consider were quite quick and easy things to do that have a huge impact. So for example, all of our report templates for governance and executive committees basically now has a wellbeing consideration section in it, which we never had before. It basically means any policy that goes through those committees, any kind of change, any proposal, well-being should be being considered. So this is a really new thing that we started in the last 12 months, and we're now looking at how we evaluate the impact that that's having. So that's kind of one example. And the governance team was so positive about including that, and it wasn't around it wasn't around creating new work. It was about just simply making a change to something that could have a big impact. I think another example is really around our kind of university strategic priorities. So our current university strategy runs until 2026. So the senior leadership team are now looking at creating the new strategy for the next 5, or beyond 2026, for the next 5 years, possibly longer. We always, in the current strategy, we did have a community pillar, and it included references to student and staff wellbeing. But we never had kind of a KPI or anything linked to that. But in the new strategic priorities, it does look like we are going to have a key performance indicator actually around student wellbeing, which is which we've never had before at the university. We've measured it, say like a lower level, but actually having that as a strategic priority and having a KPI in there is just really significant, because it means that it will be looked at by council. It will be looked at by UEB regularly. It will be examined, you know, alongside those other priorities and those other KPIs. So there's kind of like there's no escape from having to consider that at the very top level. And I think that sends a really strong message to the rest of the university around that, you know, in terms of what an ongoing priority this is. So people can then understand, you know, maybe why we are changing things and we are developing things, because it's all actually feeding into this strategic objective.
Thanks
Yeah.
so much, Ben. And that, to have that visibility, and I think for, you know, for those members who are joining the session today or catching up, to hear those real tangible examples, and as you say, like for, you know, for one of those examples, a small change but actually a huge impact in terms of getting that recognition and people to think about impact on wellbeing. It's really great to hear. Thank you. As we've said before, if you've got any questions, please do. Any questions for Ben, please do post those. But I will hand back to Lee, who's going to talk to Helen from the University of Southampton.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fran. Thanks, Ben. Okay, so the University of Southampton went through the award assessment process during 2023-2024, and they received an award outcome first time of trying, which is absolutely excellent. The university demonstrated a strong evolving commitment to mental health and inclusion. They submitted an action plan which showed a real holistic, strategic approach to mental health and wellbeing. They were also commended on their work in equality, diversity and inclusion, collaboration with NHS staff, their tailored disability programmes, and they have a real positive, goal-orientated working culture. I guess most importantly, Southampton have continued to embed a whole university approach beyond receiving the award outcome. They didn't see the award as a final destination, but as a milestone in an ongoing, we've talked about this journey a lot today, but in that ongoing journey towards a more supportive university environment. So, Helen, could you tell us a bit more about how you approach the award assessment process and what long-term impacts has achieving the award had on your university strategy and operations?
Thank you, Lee. And yeah, pleased to meet everyone here, including Tom and Ben. And I think it's really important, before I move forward, just to say this is a journey. We did, all right, we got there first time, but you know, it really is, we very much did see it as the beginning. And you know, I very much sort of commend Tom and Ben and their teams. They also are part of that journey, even if they're at a different place. You know, we're all doing brilliant things in different ways. So I think it's really important to stress that. I mean, in terms of approach, and actually you mentioned there the how ED&I, equality, diversity and inclusion was flagged up in our award report. And I think we genuinely took a whole university approach from the very, very start. This wasn't about saying, oh, could you lead this for us? It was a sort of programmatic approach from the start. And in fact, we had an ED&I strategic plan, which what that plan said is we're going to rip the plaster off ourselves. And quite literally, that is something we have done as an institution. We've ripped the plaster off ourselves and said we want to learn as much as we can. And so we went down the journey of not only the Mental Health Charter, but we've also looked at the Race Equality Charter as well, Disability Leadership, Athena Swan, something called the Technical Commitment. So it was a strategic decision to learn as much as about ourselves as we can, so that we could maximise our sort of inclusive and accessible approach. So it's never about one person. It was from leadership right from the very, very beginning. But in terms of approach, it was also about involvement and participation. And I think those two things were really, really key. And that can be a challenge in itself, because it meant that we needed a really clear governance structure from the outset. That was led by our ED&I team. It was made up of a mental health steering group with very, very clear roles within that group that enabled representation right across the board of teams and departments, but also across different roles and responsibilities. It included a clear sponsor and was chaired by our mental health champion, who is a member of the senior leadership team. And in reporting into this, this steering group were what we called a number of self-assessment teams. And that's where we got that kind of almost, can't quite call it mass participation, but with all of those different groups, everybody got involved in some way. So everybody got involved in drafting that self-assessment. People literally were self-assessing their own areas or coming together, because we had to we worked around the kind of the 4 areas: live, learn, etc., and the enabling theme. And so we were able to use this as a vehicle to bring together people in ways we might not have done so already, and to come together and to evaluate and self-assess. And so that in turn helped raise awareness of the Mental Health Charter, and hence mental health, mental well-being, all of these words just became embedded in our everyday sort of speak. I know there were some really good examples given there by Ben and Tom, and how they're embedding that, you know, by having it on templates and those sorts of things. So again, we did that just through the structure of preparing for our submission. And you know, I think moving forward, the Charter has been a really good opportunity to raise awareness and increase visibility of mental health and well-being, and to build engagement and reinforce accountability to ensure a positive impact at every single step of the way. So that was very much in terms of our approach, and that long-term impact has stayed, and I think now we see that, you know, at all our, there's one of the particular vehicles we use for change is a strategic major project, and that was something that was picked up. It's how we really ensure transformational projects are delivered with the appropriate level of capacity and involvement at our institution. And you know, at every strategic major project or small project, every piece of work we do, well-being, consideration of mental health from both a staff and student perspective is considered at every single step of the way.
Brilliant, thank you, Helen. So could you say a bit more about what the benefits of actually being an award holder have been for your institution?
Yeah, and it's something I nearly mentioned it in my earlier answer, actually. I think one of the things, I'm going to quote our wellbeing champion, who is our Vice President for Education. I think we recently relaunched our mental health steering group, and I'll touch on that in a little later, I think. But one of the, as she brilliantly articulated it, is she says, well, often with my role as a champion, it means that every time I go in the room, it kind of, people are thinking, oh, that's the mental health champion. Oh, and we must make sure, you know, she said, even if I'm going in for a discussion around our new parking fees or something completely random, people are reminded, oh, we must make sure that we've got something involved in this piece of work, be it around advancing our assessment and approach to assessment, be it, as I say, around parking, anything random. It gives you license to sort of to talk about it, and you know, to think, oh, mental health, what are we doing in this context to incorporate compassion, to incorporate consideration of people's well-being, and I think that happens naturally and organically now throughout the organisation. That it's enabled, it's a talking point. You know, I was only the other day, I was, you know, crossing the road going for a coffee, and someone said to me, so how are things going with the mental health charter? So it really, that awareness raising, because of our approach through involvement and participation, has had a really long enduring impact. But in practical terms, and I alluded to this earlier, it really was, you know, the very beginning of the journey for us. You know, one thing I must say, and I must compliment actually, and I think in different ways, Ben and Tom alluded to this also, is actually the feedback that we get from the award team is phenomenal. I mean, it is really, really detailed. Yes, it does draw out those really, areas of good practice, and that does enable you to sort of celebrate with your colleagues and talk about it. And there's a real benefit to that. But then the recommendations and the areas to sort of build upon is a huge amount of detail. So again, just on that basis, the benefit then is knowing that you've got a piece. It's that thoroughness, it's that quality assurance, it's knowing that there's that peer review, which really gives you a sense that yes, we're on the right track, but we know there's still a huge amount to do. And in fact, sometimes it feels like a double-edged sword, because we've got the award, but we've got to maintain it and we've got to keep improving. So it's that, striving for more, striving to better. There is the benefit, of course, in terms of community engagement and talking to others. We can proudly say that we're award holders, and to the extent that we were able to involve external people as well and use it as a vehicle to further cement strong relationships. So by way of an example, in our on-site meetings, we involved quite a lot of our external partners, particularly in the NHS. And just that process itself, just involving them in those meetings and bringing everyone together. Truthfully, we might not have done that in that format, but that further gave us another sort of platform on which to build and hold further conversations, because they learned different things about us that they might not have heard were we not in that context of the award itself. And I also, again, in terms of that external piece, I sit on a number, as I'm sure colleagues do here, Tom, Ben, and many of you listening here today, I sit on a number of local boards, relating to suicide prevention, mental health, and health and safety. And it is a talking point. It's something where we can talk with not only pride, but with that reassurance that we are on the right track in terms of what we're delivering, and that what we're delivering is, there's a lot of good practice, there's a lot of areas we want to develop. And we, this statement that we're not afraid of looking ourselves in the mirror and understanding, the good, the bad, and the not so good, and really getting to grips with what we are delivering.
Great, thanks, Helen. And it's just great to hear about the way you conceptualize the award as well, just being about enabling you to kind of really strengthen and embed the work and the approach you were already doing. So that's, fantastic to hear. We're running slightly short on time, so I'm going to combine these questions. Could you say a bit more about kind of how you've been able to share your good practice with the rest of the sector, and what comes next for you at Southampton?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So in terms of sharing good practice, raising, it's been interesting how, because we had so many different people involved and continue to do so, and it's put mental health and wellbeing on everybody's awareness. And it's really interesting seeing, when we sort of track all the different activity that's going on across the university, I've been so impressed with all the other initiatives that have been going on all around the university that I didn't necessarily know of. So, I can say that I've been involved, and some others who are kind of from the charter leadership group, if you like, that we've supported communities of practice with student minds. A lot of you will be linked in with other networks, be that Amoshi and disability leadership groups, all of those different networks, and where there's ever been an opportunity to talk about our experience of the charter, I have very much done so and encouraged other colleagues to do so. So we've very much done that throughout all our different higher education networks. But we've also done it through demonstrating best practice through modelling the importance of embedding wellbeing and EDI in all that we do, and demonstrating this through collaborations both within and outside the university. And that sort of panders to the point I made earlier about always bringing it to every table, no matter what the subject, you know, whether you're, you know, talking about sort of a remote, you know, IT or something like that. It's always bringing it to the table. And I know, you know, best practice and sharing with that in the sector. I know that other people have gone out to different networks that are not necessarily to do with mental health and well-being. They've been able to model the fact that, okay, we're launching this new system, but as part of that, we were mindful of the need to think of everybody's well-being, or think about the timing of our communications and compassion. So I think there's been that modelling that's been really, really interesting. And I've seen all sorts of examples of initiatives at other parts of the university. There's you know, there's our life. I'm just reading here, just checking some of my notes. You know, that there's a whole range of activity that's going on with our Life Lab, which is a research-based education project created in collaboration with NIHR and the University Hospital Southampton. They've just done a huge piece of work about mental health and well-being of children, adolescents, and families. And you know, I see all there's also a residencies team who's led a piece of work around student city, the city living strategy, and again, using these as vehicles to embed and demonstrate the importance of mental health and well-being. Lee, I'm conscious of time. You mentioned future aspirations. Well, I flagged earlier that we have recently relaunched our steering group. So one of the things we were very much aware of is we had, you know, this was done over a period of time. There's obviously quite a lead up to the actual submission of our self-assessment and the on-site award, and then so the on-site visit, and then of course the award itself, and that covered probably about 18 months to 2 years in total. And we've been refreshing now how we're going to move that forward. So there are two key things we've done ahead of the relaunch of our steering group. One, we've got an action plan that is linked to other action plans. So it's taken quite a piece of work. So we've looked at not only just the action plan that is the result of our self-assessment and the feedback from the award team, we've pulled that together, but then made sure that that is aligned with all other action plans we have, so that we can see where there are synergies in bringing actions together. We also wanted to support people to be able to talk in quite quick and easy practical terms about our approach to mental health here at the university. So we did actually create a kind of infographic, a sort of one-pager, just to illustrate our approach and what that whole university approach means and what it looks like. So we did that as well, and when we announced our achievement, we were able to share that and our action plan and move things forward. So in terms of what now, we've relaunched our steering group, and we've said it's the charter and more. So it's about horizon scanning. It's about revisiting those actions, and it's about using a range of expertise to sort of think how we are not only delivering best practice, but thinking what's next, what do we need to be thinking. So it's very much a sort of long-term piece. And the delivery of the action plan is done through our existing sort of governance structure. But this gives us that space to really sort of say, what are we seeing? What are we observing? What's out there? What's changing? What's coming through? How are we ahead of the game? And ask those sorts of questions.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing those really valuable insights, Helen. And I think, yeah, you've really encapsulated, and all the speakers today actually, about the award being, you know, just a step, a milestone within that larger change journey, and how it's really kind of supported to drive that forward. So thank you. I'll hand back to Fran.
Thanks, Lee. So we did have a couple of questions prepared for all the panel members. What we might do is just ask one and see if we've got any kind of volunteers to answer the question, and then we'll make sure that we've got time for questions. We've had a couple of questions come through from those watching, so we want to make sure that we get time to answer those. So my question would be, what would you say to other institutions considering applying but unsure if they're ready? Tom, you're eager, you're keen.
Yeah, sorry, I was just. I suppose for me, I think it would be speaking to colleagues at team level who are doing the do, who will be interviewed, who will be contribute towards those self-assessments, and getting a feel for whether they feel that they're ready, and then maybe asking yourselves the question, if you're unsure, what are we rushing for? And I think some of this comes back to the journey conversation that all colleagues have spoken about.
Thank you, Tom. Any other reflections from our panelists? Helen?
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when I first came into role and was sort of thrown straight into this, it was, I was asking that very same question myself. But I think, and we've seen it again from the people. If you think of this as a continuum, people have come in it at different stages and the outcomes are at different stages. And I mentioned that the feedback you get is so rich. It is a piece of, I think all institutions, of those that have spoken today and all of you, there's that journey of continuous improvement. And it will be, I would certainly have said to begin with, I'll never be ready because we still need to improve this. And then you do that and you think, oh, but we still need to do this and I still want to do that. So there's that sense that you'll never be ready. But I think the richness of the feedback that you get and the learning that you can get from the process can be, really quite fundamental to leading the charge. So I would say absolutely go for it. I think it's fair to say, and I think Tom and Ben will I don't know what your thoughts are, but the actual submission itself and the visit, it's not a mean undertaking, but it can be a really brilliant way of bringing people together and really raising awareness of, one of the most important topics to bring everyone together.
Thank you, Helen. I'm going to shoot straight to the questions from the audience. I've got one specifically for you, Ben. One of our attendees would be really interested to know what data the University of Bath uses to measure student wellbeing.
Yeah, so so we have a annual survey that we do that goes out to all students, which is called our Be Well survey. So we normally hold that in November every year, and that covers a wide variety of topics. In terms of, I suppose, maybe the questions a bit around that kind of strategic objective and the data we're going to use for that. So as part of that survey, we always ask and so I'm a policy and programs manager. I'm not in the mental health area, but we use the Office for National Statistics. They have kind of 4 questions to measure personal well-being. So we always ask those 4 questions in that survey. So it's going to be one of those questions that we use for this strategic objective. And I think HEPI do an annual survey out to wider number of universities that we can use as a benchmark for that. One thing that we have identified, so this is very much new for us, we're still in a journey of working out how we're going to do this, is that our response rate for that Be Well survey is around 15% of our students. So ideally, we actually want to get a much higher response rate. So what we're looking into doing is almost integrating those 4 ONS questions into, possibly into kind of registration online, for example, because then we'd be asking all of our students that question on an annual basis, and we'd get a much higher response rate, and then we could use that data to help inform us and obviously measure that strategic priority. Or we're looking at possibly some other ways of how we could integrate that. We now have kind of a course level survey that continuing students undertake, which gets quite good take up. So we're still looking into it, but yeah, we're using those Office for National ONS questions. And I think it's one area where my manager, who's the Pro Vice Chancellor for Student Experience, she went to one of the leadership communities of practice events, and I think she kind of used that to talk to other leaders about how are they at that kind of level, how are they measuring it, what tools are they using, and I think it's still an area of development. So we're very much in that kind of, I'd say we're in a learning process, and it's probably very different for each university what you'd want to use.
Thank you, Ben. So our last question is to any of the award holders, have you found or can you predict any benefits around holding the award and what that might mean for student and staff recruitment and retention given the sector landscape? Any takers? Helen, you look poised.
I just, I mean, I think we have to, I mean, we can, I think it shows a commitment. And the phrase I used earlier is about, you know, I talked about this ripping the plaster off, and it shows a commitment to taking it seriously. It shows a commitment to learning about yourself and being prepared to say, actually, we're doing this well, but there is this that we need to really, really work on. In terms of, so the question, sorry, was about staff and student recruitment. I'm not sure, to be absolutely truthful, how overtly we use those in our recruitment strategies. We would certainly want to be, as I say, just demonstrating our commitment, and it's a way of saying we take these seriously. So I think that would be a key thing for me. But as I say, it is about, it's for us, or certainly the way I personally view it, it's not about saying we're doing everything brilliantly. And it's really important, I think, for me, that, because otherwise it's that double-edged sword, because it can raise false expectations. But we are constantly learning and evolving and wanting to change things for the better, and we're prepared to do that and prepared to put it first. I think that's what it's saying, but it's not, oh, like we are, you know, we're not at all in that place of complacent. We've got the award. It's almost the opposite to that. It's like, wow, we've got it. We've got a really, you know, we are very privileged. It's a great place to be, but we want to keep and maintain that continuous improvement.
Thanks, Helen. I think we're always keen to stress that we recognise for an institution to sign up to the University Mental Health Charter programme, it's about making that commitment and demonstrating that commitment to embedding mental health and wellbeing into an organisation, and that it's about, as you say, and I think a lot of the comments today have kind of reflected that journey and how an institution is always looking to improve and think about, because as an institution you will always be changing, your student body will be changing, your staff, the circumstances in which you're operating, so it's never the finished article. I'm really conscious of time, so I'm going to bring us to a close today. First of all, I just want to say a huge thank you, Tom, Ben and Helen, for your reflections today. I'm sure those who've joined us today and those who watch back will really take something from today, from the experiences that you've shared, how you've used the report, from those kind of real tangible things about changes that you've made or the way in which that you supported your staff to go through that process. So huge thank you. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about the fact that the University Mental Health Charter programme for 25-26 is now open for registration. So this is open now and goes through till the 4th of July. For any programme members who are interested in finding out more about the award assessment, as we've been talking about today, please do get in touch with the team. You can email charter@studentminds.org.uk. And I really hope today's session has just, as we said, brought to life a little bit about going through the assessment, but also what happens when you receive your outcome. How do you use the report, and what does that journey look like going forward for an institution? Thank you for joining, and again, once again, thank you to our panelists, because we just really appreciate you giving it your time today and sharing those experiences.
Most welcome. Thank you. Nice to meet colleagues. Nice to meet people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And I hope you can go off and enjoy the sunshine now if it's sunny where you all are.